Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to heal from illness, feel your greatest, or literally heal from cancer, then do we have the Chris Beat Cancer show for you. Today I'll be talking with Chris Wark, speaker, patient advocate, wellness crusader, and the author of one of the most brilliant books I've ever read on health, Chris Beat Cancer. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about how to listen to your instincts, step out in faith, and take a massive action to help heal our bodies. That, plus we'll talk about shaggy hair and handlebar mustaches, the power of rebounders, Arma Secreta, backpack patches and the cure, the power of mom and American chopper, what on earth is Go Lightly? Oh God. And what in the world a kitty named Cash has to do with anything. So welcome to the show, Chris. Are you ready to shine?
I'm ready.
Woohoo! So, and before we dive right into things, we're going to talk about this book, Chris Beat Cancer, but I don't see it as a cancer book. I see it as a health book for everybody.
It really is that. Yeah, it really is. It's I wrote it not just for the cancer audience, but for anyone who is serious about health and healing and cancer prevention. And frankly, everyone should be serious about those things because the way we're going now, 1 out of every 2 men is predicted to be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime, and 1 out of every 3 women. So if you aren't serious about cancer prevention, then you're probably on track to getting the disease.
So, and we'll try to steer today in a place of love over fear, because this book is empowering. And speaking of love, before we dive right into things, tell us who you met in 11th grade.
11th grade, I met my wife. I met my wife in 11th grade history class, and she was pretty cute. So I sat by her, and she was dating a friend of mine, and so I had an excuse to talk to her. And we became very good friends. And a couple years later, we started dating in college. And then 5 years, 6 years after that, I married her. So we've been together for a long, long time. We've been together since like late 1995.
Wow. And
23 years.
If we go back, let's go back 25 years ago or so? I'm not sure the exact timeline. What was it like when you got out of college, and how stressed out were you?
Oh, it wasn't that long ago, but yeah, I got out of college and I graduated in 2001. Yeah, lots of stress in my life for sure. I mean, like I got engaged my final semester of college, and my wife and I had been waiting for us both to graduate before we got married because we didn't want to be like married and trying to finish college. And so, yeah, we were engaged, then I graduated, and yeah, lots of pressure, lots of stress, trying to figure out like, what am I going to do? I gotta get a real job and like make some money and stuff and like be a grown up.
And so as a grown up, you went, if I understand right, in a very indirect path from folding pants to buying homes.
Yeah, man. I worked at J. Crew in college. I worked at Wild Oats. I mean, I had tons of jobs, like most people, right? Tons of jobs. But yeah, the last job I had in college was working at J. Crew. Yeah, just working on the sales floor, folding jeans and whatnot, straightening out the shirts, helping customers, unlocking fitting rooms. And then after I graduated from University of Memphis, I had a business degree, and I went into financial planning, insurance investments, which it was not something I really wanted to do, but it just was an opportunity. And I thought, okay, well, maybe this would be a good career, right? And but I was also really interested in real estate investing on the side, and so I started dabbling in real estate investing because I really didn't like financial planning. It was just a little bit too boring and too stale for me, just a little too stuffy for me. Not that it's not to demean anyone in that industry, but anyway, it wasn't suited for my personality type. So yeah, I started buying houses, fixing them up, renting them out, started flipping and doing that kind of stuff. And I realized this is so much more fun. This is what I want to do. And so, yeah, I left. After 2 years, I left the financial industry and went into real estate.
And so if we fast forward not too long to 26, maybe you can give us a snapshot of what your look like before Christmas of when you were 26.
Yeah, I was a couple years in the real estate business. I had bought almost 40 houses at that point. So I was kind of, kind of a bit of a young hot shot, had guys twice my age taking me to lunch to ask my advice on real estate, and I'm like 26. But so things were going really well, but I was having abdominal pains and I didn't know what it was, and eventually was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer.
So, and before we go there, I've got to ask, did you know when you were trying out for a reality show that it was The Apprentice?
I did, yeah. That summer, I was, a buddy of mine actually contacted me and said, "Hey, man, I saw this. They're having these auditions for this show, this Donald Trump like reality show, and I think you'd be like perfect for this. We should make an audition tape." And he was in film and stuff, and so it was his idea really. And I was like, "Okay." And again, the show had not aired yet, so nobody knew what it was.
Yeah.
But we knew it was called The Apprentice, and we knew it was Donald Trump, and that was all we knew. And produced a tape, sent it in. The producers really liked it, and they called and said, "We love your tape. Can you come do another interview?" And so I went to Nashville for a second interview, which I blew. I'd never been on camera. I was nervous. And I just didn't do well in the on-camera interview, and so I did not make the next cut. And then when the show came on, it was funny because there was a young real estate investor guy on the first season, and my buddy Clay was like, that guy got your spot. Like, that was you, right? That's you. Like, that should have been you. There's another guy like kind of just like me from another city. But anyway, it was a blessing in disguise because again, I was having these abdominal pains, and during the time that show would have been taping, was the time where the pain was really becoming pretty intense every day. And I'm glad I was not in that high stress environment trying to figure this show out and, compete with other people and, to be Donald Trump's apprentice or whatever. I'm so glad I did not end up on that show.
So you did get it checked out. I'm guessing your wife coerced you, walked you in, somethinged you in to get this finally looked out. What'd you find? Where'd you go from there? And what was your mindset like?
Yeah, I was started with the primary care doctor, and they didn't know what was wrong, and did some x-rays and whatever. And then eventually they said, well, we're going to refer you to a gastroenterologist, which is a, digestive health doctor specialist. And they did a colonoscopy, and they found a golf ball sized tumor. And I woke up from the anesthesia after the colonoscopy, and they're like, "Yeah, man, you've got a tumor in your colon." And we took a biopsy. We're going to send it to the lab, and hopefully it's not cancer. And a day or so later, I got a call, and it was cancer.
At 26, finding out you have cancer. Usually that's something people not expect, but think is a later in life thing. What was going through your mind?
It is a later life thing for most cancer patients. Young adult cancer is pretty rare. Right now, it's becoming less rare. Young adult cancer is on the rise, especially colon cancer. So I was kind of in the first wave of young adult colon cancers, right? Sort of an early victim, to use the word I actually hate. But yeah, it was a total shock. Total shock. My whole life changed in one instant. As soon as I got the diagnosis, like my whole life changed because I started thinking about my future. Am I going to live? Am I going to die? How much time do I have left? What's treatment going to be like? I'd never had any medical treatments before, and certainly had seen how devastating cancer treatment can be out there for people in the world. No one close to me, but I've seen cancer patients, right? And it's like, wow, it's profound how destructive the treatments are. So, all that stuff is swirling in my head, lots of fear.
So you got, and it's interesting, many years ago I had heard some audio book from Deepak Chopra, and he talked about if you have a tumor, you get it out, then you look at what you can do. I'm not sure you were exactly thinking about Deepak at that point, but it sounds like that's just what you did.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about him for sure. I didn't know what to do, but I was told that we've got to get you into surgery right away, get this thing out of you before it spreads and kills you. And I was rushed into surgery. And the crazy thing about cancer treatment that most people don't know, they don't know what's going to happen to them until they're diagnosed, is they rush you into treatment. So within a day or two of a diagnosis, they're doing something to you. They're either surgery or chemo or maybe radiation. So you're in treatment before you even realize what's happening to you. And, it's not like acne, right? Or arthritis. I mean, some of these treatments are life threatening, are debilitating, and can cause profound damage to your body. And so the problem is that most cancer patients don't know what they're getting into, and they're just rushed in out of fear. So I was definitely in that category. I was just like, okay, whatever you say. So we postponed the surgery for about 10 days because I didn't want to be in the hospital over Christmas. But I went in on December 30th. They took out a third of my large intestine with the tumor, realized it had spread to surrounding lymph nodes, took out a bunch of lymph nodes, some of which were positive for cancer. And when I woke up, they said, it's worse than we thought. You're stage 3C. And we were hoping you would only be stage 2. So now our recommendations for you have changed, and now you're going to need 9 to 12 months of chemotherapy.
And as you're trying to wrap your mind around this, well, actually, I look at synchronicities in life, and I have a coaching client calls it divine breadcrumbs. I love these things, these hints from the universe, if we're open to see them. When you went into the oncologist, what was playing on the TV in the waiting room?
Well, I want to tell that story, but we got it. You're skipping ahead too far
Go
because
for it. Back up.
two things happened in the hospital that are worth talking about.
Yeah.
And they were two. This is right along the same lines, though. Divine breadcrumbs, as you call them. One was the first. Speaking of breadcrumbs, the first meal they served me in the
Sloppy
hospital.
Joe.
The sloppy Joe. That was the first meal they gave me after cutting out a third of my large intestine. And sloppy Joes are just terrible, right? They're gross. Nobody likes them. Restaurants don't serve them. The only place you can get one is if you're in the military or you're in prison or, maybe like some high school cafeterias or summer camps or something. So it's sort of the best, worst example of industrialized, food for the masses, right? Like assembly line cafeteria food. But anyway, they plopped this thing down in front of me in the hospital bed, and I'm like, gross,
And you hadn't had a meal, had you?
No, I hadn't eaten in almost 2 days, something like that, and because you're not supposed to eat the day before surgery, and so anyway, I mean, I was hungry. I ate some of it. I don't even know if I ate it all. I can't remember, but I did have this kind of. I was just surprised. Like, really? Like you're feeding sick people, cancer patients, like a sloppy Joe? What's really ironic is that red meat is a known carcinogen. It's known to cause colon cancer. It's a group 2 carcinogen, according to the World Health Organization. So like they're feeding the colon cancer patient food that causes colon cancer.
And they give you a cigarette.
Yeah, right. Here's a cigarette and some whiskey with your meal. So then the other thing that happened was, again, along the lines of nutrition. I was having a conversation with my surgeon the day that they told me I could go home, and I said, "Hey, is there any food I need to avoid?" And his response was, "No, just don't lift anything heavier than a beer." And he was making a joke. I was like, "Oh, okay," but in the back of my mind, I'm like, "Really? That's all? Like, you don't have any nutrition or diet advice at all?" I mean, I had worked in a Wild Oats, which got bought by Whole Foods eventually. So I'd worked in a health food store. I grew up with a mom who was into health foodie stuff. I had at one point in my life in college gotten really into weightlifting and nutrition supplements and bodybuilding and stuff. So like I knew that nutrition and had a profound impact on your health. But yet doctors didn't seem to care, and the hospital didn't care either. So to me, that was just strange, right? Why is there such a big disconnect here? So I go home and I'm thinking about my life and my future and chemotherapy and what's coming next. And, just the idea of poisoning my way back to health did not make sense to me. I just didn't have a good feeling about chemotherapy. I felt like this is not something I need to be doing right now. I knew how weak and vulnerable I was, like deep in my core. Like I knew I am not in a physical position, right, to handle these toxic drugs. But I didn't know what else to do. And so I just prayed about it. I'm a Christian. My wife and I are Christians. And I was just like, God, if there's another way, please show me. Like, just show me. I don't know what to do. If there's, I help, right? Help. And by the way, it's a great thing to do. If you need help, just ask for some help, right? Ask for some help. So 2 days later, I got a book that was sent to me from a man in Alaska who knew my dad. And this guy sends me this book, and I start reading it. And it was written by another guy who had healed his own colon cancer with nutrition. And I thought, whoa, like this is amazing. This is an answer to my prayer. I prayed I asked for something, this showed up.
Yeah.
Like this came, and I have no doubt this is exactly what I need to be doing. And that book was about the raw food diet, basically, and juicing. And it made a very simple case that was compelling that, and now we know, there's been so much scientific evidence published that has validated the claims of this author who did not have much science in his book, but at that time. But anyway, he was basically saying, look, the reason so many people are getting cancer and heart disease and diabetes is because of our diet. Our diet. We're poisoning ourselves. We're polluting our bodies. And these diseases are manifesting as a result of our choices. Mm-hmm. And that to me was so powerful, such a powerful idea. I live by a train, by the way, so
perfect. It's honking, it's blowing its horn for emphasis that this is an important moment.
The conductor is loving this. So anyway, I really latched on to a few very simple ideas that I think are just very simple truths. And one is that I believe that God made the earth for us. And I believe that everything that we need comes from the earth, right? I don't think we need to manufacture anything for health, right? We can get everything we need for health from the earth. And so this book was making the same case, right? That you need to go back to the Garden of Eden. You need to stop eating all this meat and dairy, processed food, junk food, sugar, salt, right? All this man-made junk, and go back to eating a pure, whole foods, organic diet, right? Of fruits and vegetables from the earth, produce from the earth, and eat only that. And I thought, well, this is crazy. This is like such a radical idea. And at that time, which was January 2004, I mean, no one was talking about the raw food diet or raw foodism. Nobody I knew was talking about it. And it wasn't cool, hip, trendy, like it is now. And so, and there was no social media there, it's just like, it was this very foreign and strange idea, but I loved the idea. I loved that, this idea that what would happen if I started trying to overdose on nutrition? What would happen if all I put in my body was broccoli, cauliflower, kale, carrots, beets, cabbage, onions, mushrooms, peppers, garlic, right? Just like fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, herbs, spices, everything I can from the earth, from nature. And so that made a lot more sense to me than chemotherapy. Chemotherapy drugs break you down. And again, not that there isn't some value to them in some cases for certain types of cancer and things. And I don't talk people out of chemo. That's not my mission. It's not my message at all. But what I try to help people understand is that there are some serious risks to chemotherapy, and the benefits are often greatly exaggerated. And so you need to make an informed decision, which I talk about a lot in the book, as you know, about the pitfalls and perils of the medical industry and the conventional cancer industry.
I love that you break down the language, because the language suggests that 60%, 80% of tumors respond. And then they use the word respond and remission and all these terms as if you're going to be 100% healthy. What they don't say is it's actually only giving you oftentimes 1 to 3 months more, if that, and the treatment may kill you as well.
Yeah, and it depends on the cancer type and the stage, right, and the condition of the patient. But what's happening, there's several things happening in the oncology office that are really, arguably could be considered malpractice. One of them is when patients ask, "What, like, how did I get this cancer?" Like, what do you think caused this? Why do I have cancer? What caused this? They typically are told, "Oh, well, we don't know what caused it, but it might be genetic, might be hereditary, or it may just be bad luck." And when they tell a patient that, what they're doing is they're turning them into a powerless victim, right? They're saying it's nothing you did, and therefore there's nothing you can do to help yourself, right? Because it's just bad luck or bad genes. Your diet, your lifestyle, your stress, your environment, those have nothing to do with your disease. So the reason that's malpractice is because we know, based on published scientific evidence, that up to 95% of cancers are caused by diet, lifestyle, environment, right? Those three factors. Now, stress is an underlying factor that I'll talk about later, but the scientific community and multiple researchers agree, right? More than multiple, like there's a pretty large consensus, right? We know what's causing cancer. There's a lot of factors, but we know what pretty much all of them are. And so if you want to empower a patient and help them, you teach them what is causing cancer so they can eliminate those things from their life. Because if those things are still present in their life, the things that cause cancer are still in their life, then they're going to contribute to that disease's progression. But if you remove those causes, those instigators, aggravators, right, proponents of disease, then you free up the body, right? You free up its ability to heal. It's like you take remove the barriers to healing. So again, but I didn't know any of this stuff, right? I didn't know any of this stuff back then. All I had were my instincts and my intuition, and I was just thinking, I want to build my body up, right? I want to build myself up. I don't want to tear myself down and then try to rebuild after that. Like, I want to try to improve my immune function. I probably need to detoxify. I need to really, like I said earlier, overdose on nutrition because maybe I have some nutritional deficiencies, and maybe giving my body an abundance of good things, right, will produce good results. So I just had this mentality of taking massive action, right? Massive life transforming action and leaving no stone unturned in my quest for health and wellness and healing. So that's what I decided to do basically overnight. I was like, okay, overnight, I'm a raw vegan now. Hey, honey, I'm a raw vegan now. Where can we get a juicer? So some family members around me didn't understand. Of course, they thought I was losing my mind and going off on some, deluded, just calamity, goose chase, I guess you could say. And so people close to me were telling me, no, like, what? No, you don't need to do that. Like, that's not going to help you. That's not going to work. You got to do what the doctor says. Don't you think if there was something better, they would know about it? I know somebody who tried alternative therapies and they died. And so things shifted very quickly from, in my mind and heart, from excitement and to confusion and anxiety and fear, right? And the people who love me did that to me. They didn't mean to, but they did. And so now I'm in this weird mental, emotional state of okay, I prayed, I asked for something, I got this thing that resonates with me.
Yep.
Like, I know this is what I've got to do. And now, but everybody's telling me it's wrong, except for my mom. She was the only one who
Oh,
actually
mom.
believed in me. Yeah. She was the only one that understood and was of a holistic mindset in the early days of my cancer journey. So
How is Micah, your wife, with this?
she had a hard time with it. She had a hard time understanding like why I wouldn't do exactly what the doctor said. Because she was raised in a family that they just went to the doctor for everything, right? And doctors know best. Like, why wouldn't you do what they say? So it was difficult at first, and we had some very, tense. There was tension. It was strain on our relationship and on our marriage and all that. We had some difficult conversations because I became a different person overnight, and I was trying to evangelize her and get her on board with me. And I was constantly talking to her about what I was reading and learning and like what we need to be doing. And she was like, I don't like who you're becoming. I don't like the person you're becoming. And I'm like, oh man, now what do I do? So, in order to appease family members, mainly, I agreed to go see the oncologist that had been assigned to me or whatever. So we go to the clinic, and the I'm sitting in the waiting room with my wife. We're watching the television. It's the morning. So the morning shows, Good Morning America or Today Show. One of those shows is on the
Yeah.
TV. And out comes Jack LaLanne.
Love it.
And Jack LaLanne, most people, millennials may not know who he is, but he was one of the most famous health and wellness influencers of the 20th century. And he had a TV show that was black and white about health and fitness, like in the 1950s. And here he is in, 2003, January 2004. He's like close to 80 years old, late 70s. And he comes out and he's fit and, strong and fit and full of energy. And he's talking about the reason we're all so sick is because we're eating all this man-made food and processed food and junk food. And if man made it, don't eat it. And you need to go back to eating fruits and vegetables and juicing, right? Exactly what I was doing. I'd been doing it for a week at that point. And I'm like, oh my, I can't believe this is on right now in the cancer clinic, right? It's like this, it was just that breadcrumb, like you said, right?
Yep.
This like just divine signal, like you're doing the right thing, like stay the course. But we go back to see the oncologist, and he says, look, you got a 60% chance of living 5 years with treatment, which was not very encouraging. He said, I'm going to tell it to you straight. You have colon cancer at 26. It's very aggressive in young adults. And so, it didn't give me much confidence that the treatments were going to help me very much or whatever. And I said, well, what about the raw food diet? And he said, no, you can't do that. It'll fight the chemo.
Let me pause you for 1 second. I thought about that line. It will fight the chemo because it's actually trying to make you stronger.
Yeah. 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 It's in some, and he was actually wrong, right? He was wrong about the raw food diet. There's an old idea that cancer patients couldn't eat raw food because chemotherapy destroys your immune system, and they're afraid the bacteria on an apple, which is normally harmless, might cause a problem in your body because your immune system's wiped out by chemo. Turns out there's very little risk. But also, cancer patients eating a raw food diet, they tend to detoxify chemotherapy very quickly. And so the doctors are concerned that it's not going to work as well because the diet's so healthy, right? That it helps your body, be resistant to chemotherapy. It turns out when you eat super healthy and you're going through cancer treatment, chemo and stuff, what the eating super healthy does is it protects your healthy cells and it weakens the cancer cells. Wow. So anyway, I didn't know any of that at the time. And so he's telling me, yeah, I can't do the raw food diet. And then I said, well, okay, are there any alternative therapies available? And he said, no, there are none. If you don't do chemotherapy, you're insane. And from that point on, the conversation shifted, and he basically, the power dynamic shifted, and he basically was doing anything he could do to convince me I had to do chemo or I was going to die. Right? He's just pulling all the tricks out of his hat. Everything that he said to patients. Right? And most of it I've forgotten. I don't know what he said. It was just a big blur. But I just felt like I was just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Right? And he used fear to manipulate me and convince me that I had to do chemotherapy. And one thing he said that popped out, which was weird, and my wife had to remind me that he said it, was in the middle of the thing. He said, he's talking to me, like all these reasons you got to do chemo, blah, 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 blah. And he said, look, man, I'm not saying this because I need your business. Which was like, what? Like, that was the one thing that seemed so strange. Why would you even say that? This isn't a business conversation. Like, I wasn't even thinking about this place as a big business, but oh yeah, I guess it is. I guess this is a big business, right? Well, we know the average cancer patient's worth over $300,000 in revenue. It's actually even more now because cancer drugs are getting more and more expensive. But from surgery and radiation and chemo drugs and like breast reconstruction surgery, nipple tattoos, and on and on and on, right? All the other drugs they have to prescribe to alleviate the side effects of chemotherapy, hospital visits. Patients are making the industry a ton of money. Yeah. And so, again, and it's not the doctor's fault. It's just a bad system. It's a system that rewards doctors for prescribing harmful drugs that don't work very well in a lot of cases for cancer. And you brought up this earlier, and I didn't fully unpack it, but the terminology that's used is very deceptive. And so when a doctor says to a patient, well, this is the best treatment available for your type of disease, and it's shown to work very well, right? Well, when the doctor says works well, right, or it's been shown to put 60% of patients in remission, or something like that. Well, the patient's thinking, oh, well, okay, like works, that means cure. Works means cure, right? Remission means cure, right? No, it does not mean cure. Works means tumor shrinkage. That's all it means. Mm-hmm. Remission, there's different stages of remission. There's partial remission. That means some of the tumor's gone. And there's complete remission, which means it's all gone, but only temporarily in many cases. It's gone while the chemotherapy drugs are circulating in the system after a number of treatments. But then after a few months to a year, new tumors. So, but the patients don't understand this, right? And then they've got to go through treatment all over again with new, more aggressive drugs. And what's really the big challenge in cancer is that cancer stem cells, which only make up a very small percentage of the tumor, they're the ones that are building the tumor. All the other cells in the tumor, like 90% of the cells in the tumor, are not cancer stem cells. They can't form new tumors. And those are the cells that are killed by chemotherapy. So in a lot of cases, chemo doesn't kill the cancer stem cells. And that's the problem, right? It's kind of like if you've got a pest problem, right? If you've got like insect invasion, right? You've got to kill the females that keep having babies, right? And the cancer stem cells are kind of like, in a way, kind of like females, right? They're the ones that are really causing all the problems. So again, I didn't know any of this stuff, right? I was a clueless cancer patient, but my instincts and intuition were telling me, you need to build your body back up. You need to change your life. You need to figure out what's making you sick, right? And replace those things with health promoters, right? Replace disease promoters with health promoters. And this is not a health promoter, right? This treatment they're offering you is not a health promoter. It's going to make you sick. It's going to make you sicker than you were, your You're going to suffer more than you did when you were diagnosed. So I walked out of that appointment. I went straight to the desk. I made another appointment to get a port put in to start chemotherapy in a few weeks because I was so afraid. He used fear to manipulate me, and it worked, just like so many other patients. Cancer clinics are a fear factory, right? And one of the worst things you can do is make a decision based on fear, because fear-based decisions are almost always the wrong decision. We need to make decisions based on facts and faith, not fear. So my wife and I walk out to her car, sat in her car, held hands, and I was so discouraged. My hope had been shattered. I was afraid. I was confused, and we just cried, man. Just sat in her car and cried, and I choked out a prayer, just didn't know what to pray. It was just a very, very, very low point for my wife and I, because again, I thought I was on the right track, and this guy just sort of blew up my island, so to speak. So I was fortunate, though, or I could even say blessed, that I had several weeks before I was going to start chemotherapy. And in that time, I went back home, and it's like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to sit around and mope and feel sorry for myself and just wait for chemo to start, and just self-medicate? Or am I going to take control of my situation in my life and fire up the juicer? And I decided to fire up the juicer, right? I'm like, okay, I've been on this raw food diet for a week. I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep doing this. I know this can't hurt me, and I think it's helping me. I feel really good. And I just knew deep down it was good, right? I knew what I was doing was good for me. And the next day, I went and had an appointment with a naturopathic doctor, and it was a completely different experience. And he encouraged me. He's a Christian. He prayed with me, and he was the first person to tell me, you're making the right decision. And no one had said that to me before. I mean, my mom supported me, but this was the first person outside of my mom who said, the raw food diet is exactly what you need to be doing. And so I'm like, oh, okay, somebody believes in me. I'm not crazy. And so I just kept on. I was eating tons of raw fruits and vegetables every day, juicing about 64 ounces of carrot juice every day. Naturopath helped me with some targeted supplementation. He ordered a bunch of tests like urine test, hair test, stool test, saliva test. Like, I was just trying to get a complete metabolic picture of what was going on in my body. Did I have parasites? Did I have heavy metal toxicity? Did I have nutritional deficiencies? Like, did I have adrenal, like adrenal exhaustion, which I did. And based on those findings, he had some very specific supplementation, herbal things, and nutraceuticals that he suggested I take. And he also helped me nutritionally, and he recommended, well, carrot juice is great. Why don't you also add beet and celery and ginger root to it? So I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So we just amped it up a little more. And so when the day came to start chemotherapy, to get the port put in, right? I woke up that morning, and, I was just like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. This is not for me. It's not for now. And I thought to myself, I can always do chemotherapy, right? It's not like I didn't say I'm never doing it, but I wasn't right for me at that time. Wasn't ready for it. Didn't feel right. So I was a no-show. I didn't go. And then they started calling my house over a period of days and weeks, calling, leaving messages. They finally sent a certified letter to my house that I had to sign for, which was super weird. I'm like, man, they are really after me. They don't want to lose me as a patient, clearly. But they eventually left me alone. And during that time, I also found an integrative oncologist who was just an incredible man who supported me. And he wasn't as he definitely was not educated on nutrition like the naturopath, but he was in his 70s and he had come out of retirement because he didn't like being retired. He'd reopened his practice and he was doing IV vitamin C. And he was trying to integrate other non-toxic but also not FDA approved therapies into his practice because he knew the limitations of chemotherapy and surgery and radiation. He had seen a lifetime of failed cancer treatment for his patients. So he just really wanted to, like, what else can I do to help these people? And he was very much aware of the critical role of the immune system. And so that, to him, that was why he was doing IV vitamin C and some other therapies too. He was trying to help boost his patient's immune function because he thought, and he was right, that the immune system is the key to health and disease. If you have an overloaded or suppressed immune system, you will have disease in your body.
You make a great quote. You're not sick because you have cancer. You have cancer because you're sick.
Right. That's absolutely correct. And unfortunately, most people don't think of it that way. They think cancer is the problem. They think the tumor is the problem. Well, if I just cut off the tumor, if I just poison the tumor, radiate the tumor, then I'll be okay. Right? If I just kill this cancerous tumor, then I'll be fine. But the truth is, the tumor is a symptom of a large problem, head to toe problem, a systemic metabolic problem. Your body is sick, right? And you have cancer because you're sick. And so in order to reverse the cancer, you have to get well, the whole body well, right? This is really the fundamental core tenet of holistic health, right? And holistic medicine. It's looking at the whole body and supporting the body's ability to heal itself rather than trying to target and kill a cancer cell, right? Or a cancerous tumor. So that made more sense to me, just instinctively, even just logically. Like, yeah, I want to heal the whole thing. Your body's got a bunch of systems. They're all interconnected, right? You got your immune system, your central nervous system, your musculoskeletal system, your respiratory system, your digestive system, right? You got all these systems. They have to work together. And if one goes down, right, and not goes down completely, but if one is dysfunctional, it affects all the others. And I just knew I have some dysfunction. I need to fix this, right? I need to figure out how I can support my body and help it heal. So that was my intention from, almost from day one, but right from day one of my healing journey was I'm going to do everything in my power to support my body's ability to heal. Nutrition was the foundation. And so I want to share some specific takeaways for your audience so they understand whether they're into prevention or healing. So the number one thing nutritionally is you need to be eating a plant-based diet. Fruits and vegetables. Meat and dairy fuel cancer growth. Okay? If you don't have cancer, sure, you can get away with eating lots of meat and dairy. But if cancer develops, and some cancers are actually caused by certain types of meat. So red meat causes colon cancer. Processed meat, bacon, hot dogs, sausage, ham, right? Jerky. Processed meats are group 1 carcinogen. Even more evidence, just as much evidence as cigarettes cause cancer, right? So
I was surprised birth control pills are in a class 1 carcinogen you mentioned as well.
Birth control pills also cause cancer, and hormone replacement therapy causes cancer. So, which are, there are a lot of drugs, a lot of prescription drugs that cause cancer, and the drug companies say it on the commercial. Do they not? At the end of the commercial, it's like, how many times have you seen a drug commercial where they say very quickly at the end, may have these kind of side effects, blah, 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 is also known to cause certain types of cancer. Like, you hear this all the time. If you start paying attention to drug commercials at the end, yes, pharmaceuticals are causing cancer. So now for me, that wasn't an issue. I'd never taken pharmaceuticals, but I had eaten a standard American diet my whole life, and I'd eaten tons of meat and dairy, processed food, junk food, tons of sugar, salt, oils, additives, preservatives, artificial colors, flavors, right? Sweeteners, all this crap. right? That's your body's never meant to ingest. I've been eating it for years. And unfortunately for me, and I it got me early, right? I may have had genetic weakness, like Lynch syndrome. I need to do more research on this, but um, my body was less resilient toward detoxification than your average person, right? Because colon cancer usually doesn't strike till people are in their 50s. But having said that, remember earlier I said young adult colon cancer is on the rise. That's because so many of us have grown up eating so much processed food and fast food. I'm 41. My generation was the fast food generation. It was the first generation where fast food restaurants were everywhere. And my parents did not grow up with fast food restaurants. There was like one or two here and there. Mm-hmm. But when I grew up, there was McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Taco Bell, KFC, Subway, like on, every corner of the city, right? You're finding these restaurants. So I'm digressing a little bit, but it's all making a larger point. And the point is we got to get back to eating fruits and vegetables because they have all these amazing anti-cancer compounds. So for prevention or healing, you need to be eating at least 10 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. 10 servings. Now, 10 servings, people think, that sounds like a lot. That's what's like 10 meals? No. A serving is only half a cup of fruit or vegetables, raw or cooked. And most people, if you're eating like a plate full of food, you're eating 3 or 4 servings. So 3 meals of vegetables or fruit or both, you're going to get 10 servings. It's pretty easy. And replacing the meat with like potatoes or beans or, starchy vegetables or whatever, lentils, garbanzo beans, chickpeas, organic corn. Organic's a given, right? It all should be organic, but is how you get those 10 servings, right? You replace the bread and the meat and cheeses with more fruits or vegetables. It's pretty easy. So 10 servings is optimal for disease prevention. When I was healing cancer, though, I was consuming 15 to 20 servings of fruits and vegetables per day because I was eating 3 giant meals of fruits and vegetables, and I was juicing all day. So I was making 64 ounces of juice every morning with my champion juicer, I just made time for it. And then I was drinking this juice throughout the day. So it's like about 8 ounce servings of juice, right? So I kept it really simple. I was eating giant salads full of broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, onions, mushrooms, peppers, all these amazing anti-cancer vegetables. I was making fruit smoothies. I was eating fresh fruit. I was juicing every day. And I just repeat, right? I kind of dialed it in, created a daily plan of like hardcore nutrition and just repeated it every day. I stopped eating out. I stopped, eating everything I'd eaten before and just started eating the same thing every day, which was great for me. And so that's the core component is nutrition. But beyond that, exercise is unbelievable for cancer healing and prevention. It's so underrated. It's so underrated. It's like there's so much research on exercise for cancer survival and prevention. There's a brand new study that came out where they found that I'm going to butcher the statistics, so I probably won't even say the statistics of the study because I don't have them like locked in. But basically, they found that people who exercise, who are active in exercise, have a lower risk of death, significantly lower risk of premature death than people who are sedentary. And what they also found is that there was no limit. There was no amount of exercise that was too much. And the people that exercised the most, which they equated to the level of a professional athlete, right? So like your ultra marathon runners and people like that, had the best, the longest, or the lowest risk of premature death. So exercise is amazing. Everyone needs 30 minutes to 60 minutes per day. And really the 60 minutes is probably a better target, right? Per day. But minimum minimum 30 minutes of brisk walking every day, 6 days a week, at least 6 days a week. So I take a day of rest, which I think is very healthy.
Yeah.
And everyone should take a day of rest where they don't exercise, they don't work, you just let your mind and body relax. This is a biblical principle. It's in the 10 Commandments. It's in the 10. Most people, like, everybody knows, like, oh yeah, the 10 Commandments, those are like rules about morality. One of them is don't work on the Sabbath. Like, and that's the one that nobody remembers. Like, they can remember, like, don't lie, don't steal, don't commit adultery. Like, they can remember some of those, but everybody is always surprised. And you're like, yeah, and also you're supposed to take a day of rest. So, so exercise and rest are super important. And I systematically went through my house and removed all the toxic body care products, toxic cleaning products, replaced them all with non-toxic brands, and just was chipping away, detoxing my life, and then addressing my thoughts and my emotions. And the final piece for me was learning how to give God my fear and my worries, my anxieties, and then trust him in the process. Like, trust him to lead me. I prayed, I got an answer to prayer. I knew it was an answer to prayer, but I had a lot of opposition. And so it's scary when you're stepping out into the unknown, right? Alone. That's what it felt like. I was stepping out alone, like, oh, I'm going into the jungle by myself. And God, if you really did open up this path for me into the jungle, then you got to get me through it, because I've never been through and I don't know where I'm going, and everybody thinks I'm crazy. So that's really where I had to put my faith into action, like, I really had to trust God to lead me in the most difficult season of my life. And he did. He led me through. And that's when, again, I love the breadcrumb analogy that you mentioned. And for me, I call them mini miracles. That's kind of my little word, or little phrase. But, there were just all these little clues and signs along the way that would encourage me that I was going the right way. And it's kind of like if you've ever been on a hike, in a hiked in an area you've never been before. Usually at some point on the hike, you're like, are we lost? Right? And you're like, I haven't seen a sign in a while, and I don't know if we're going the right way. And you kind of start to get nervous, right? You're like, oh crap, like, I hope we're not lost or way off going down the wrong trail, or like, I don't even know where we are. This is not good. But you're like, okay, we'll just keep going, right? So you keep going, and then within a few minutes or an hour or whatever, you see another sign, and you're like, oh, okay, good, yes, the arrow is pointing the right way. We're almost there, or we're almost, made the loop or whatever. And that's exactly how it was for me on the cancer journey. I definitely dealt with fear and anxiety, and it was a daily thing I had to deal with. And because, I couldn't get blood work done every day. I couldn't get a scan every day. You don't know if you're getting better or worse. And you're afraid you're getting worse, but you hope you're getting better. And so those little reminders that, like, I'm with you, you're on the right track, keep going, like, don't be afraid. Those reminders were so powerful. And I was so thankful for them when they came into my life, and they came through people and books and, Jack LaLanne on the TV in the clinic, like, just all kinds of fun ways.
I want to talk real briefly about your mindset. You have a beat cancer mindset. It's 5 steps. I'm going to read a few of them, and then I want to stomp on one of them. 1, accept total responsibility for your health. 2, be willing to do whatever it takes. 3, take massive action. And I want to stop on number 4, make plans for the future, because you did something that was so faith-based, so crazy, and to me, as a survival of the species, such a right thing to do for flipping the on switch on you. You and Micah decided in this to have kids.
Yeah, we did. We did. So thanks for bringing that up. After my diagnosis, I was confronted with my own mortality. And I was a young guy. I didn't have any kids, and I always thought I would. And I, like I wanted to be a dad. That was sort of like one of those things you check off the box of like life experiences, and you've got one on the way, which is so
I
exciting.
got almost tears coming out here. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's like, there's like, I didn't have that many aspirations in life, but one of them was like, yeah, well, yeah, sure. I'm going to have kids. I'm going to be a dad. And, but now it's like cancer, like how long am I going to live? I may die and not even have kids, and that's it. I'm just like the guy that everybody talks about, like, oh yeah, man, it's so sad that Chris died of cancer in his 20s. What a tragedy or something. And so I talked to my wife, and we talked about it, and I just said, like, what do you think about starting a family? And it gets me choked up telling the story too. And she courageously said yes. She said yes to have a child with me, not knowing if I was going to be around to help raise this child. And to me, that was just such a brave and courageous decision. And it was because she loved me so much. That's the only reason. It's because she loved me. She wanted to have my baby. I mean, like, wow. That's true love. I mean, that is love in action. So we started trying to get pregnant, doing that thing that you do when you want to have a baby. And she got pregnant right away. And so 3 months, like 3 months after my diagnosis, somewhere in that 3 to 4 month range, she found out that she was pregnant. We found out, and we were like, oh my gosh, like the baby's okay. Like we're going to have a baby. And, some family members were excited, and others were like, oh gosh, don't you think you should have waited? And we're like, gee, thanks, But a year later, 13 months after my diagnosis, I was back in the hospital. And this time I was holding a little baby girl. And it was just, I now had something else to live for. Initially, I had two things to live for: my wife and my parents. Right? Those were my reasons to live. I'm an only child, so like I just thought it was so painful for me to think about my parents burying me, right? And then having been with my wife for about 8 years at that time, it was very painful for me to think about her burying me, right? Her and my parents at my graveside, like that image, I was like, that can't happen. And now I got this okay, I got a baby. It's more reason to live. But what you said, making plans for the future, which is like what I call part of the beat cancer mindset, that's exactly what it was, right? I'm like, I'm going to be a dad. I'm going to live a long time. And the choices I was making, the dietary choices, exercise, stress reduction, detoxification, like all of the things I was doing because I wanted to live. Right? These were choices to live, as opposed to a lot of choices that cancer patients are rushed into making, which are choices to not die. Yeah. Right? And there's a difference, right? Between I'm doing this because I don't want to die versus I'm doing this because I want to live, and I want to live a long life, and I'm doing things that promote long life and health. And so, and it's also sort of a quick fix, short-term mentality versus a long-term mentality, right? A lot of medical treatments are very short-term mentality. It's like a Band-Aid to a problem.
It's also fear versus love, which is a big theme here. What you focus on, you say it with number 5, enjoy your life in the process. What you focus on expands. If you're focusing on how can I live, how can I have a greater quality of life, how can I enjoy life, rather than how can I survive through this next treatment, it's which is fear-based, is a very different world.
It is. It's a very fear-based mindset that most patients and doctors have. And you don't have to have that mindset. There's a different way of looking at things. And again, love, faith, facts, like looking at things in a different way, not only changes the way you think, the way you feel, it also changes the way that you approach difficult decisions. So, and it became my anchor, really, that beat cancer mindset. became the anchor that sort of held me down when my emotions were kind of all over the place, right? And it kept me sort of on the straight and narrow, just the straight and narrow path of just like focusing on God, doing everything I could do to help my body heal, and not letting fear and doubt and anxiety influence me. And believe me, those emotions were trying to knock me off course, right? They were trying. They will, man. It's like, you're in a boat, and the wind and the rain and the storms, right, of life. I mean, it's really fear and anxiety and worry. Like those are the storms of life right there. Those are the things that'll knock you off course. And so you have to really fight to stay on course. And what I like to call it, pointing your ship toward healthy island, right? So no matter, you may get knocked off course here and there a little bit, but you can always right yourself and point your ship toward healthy island again, right? And that's the goal. So that's what I was doing. I was just like, I'm headed to healthy island. That's where I'm going. Like, is this going to serve me? Is this going to help me get there? Or is this going to pull me away and detract from it? So that was, again, the lens, the filter by which I evaluated information and ideas and things that came into my life. So, spoiler alert, I didn't die. I got well. I just progressively got better and better, healthier and healthier. Yeah. And had blood work done every month, had scans done along the way. I was just paying close attention on my progress. And that's important. It's important to find a doctor. If you're doing, whether you do conventional or alternative or both, you've got to have a great relationship with the doctor who supports you and is helping you monitor your progress, because you don't want to be flying in the dark, right? You need to know what's happening in your body. So anyway, I had those relationships. I found those people, right? They weren't obvious. They weren't just, knocking on my door trying to help. Like, I had to go beat the bushes to find the right people. And so I encourage cancer patients all the time to say, look, if you don't like this doctor, find another doctor. There's lots of good ones. And so I know sometimes it's easier just to stick with the one that they, assigned you, but you'll be so much happier when you find someone that understands you, that supports you, that cares about you, versus someone that's arrogant and rude and thinks they know it all and wants to make you feel stupid, which is unfortunately how many are. But so yeah, man, I stayed the course, kept doing my thing, got progressively better and better. And this, the circulating cancer cells, circulating stem cells that were in my body after surgery that they wanted, were hoping they could eliminate with chemotherapy, I eliminated with nutrition, with radical life change. And, again, I say nutrition, but there's a piece of it. Nutrition's a huge piece. Nutrition, exercise, stress reduction. And the big part of stress, and in addition to giving to my fear to God and trusting Him, was forgiveness.
What does forgiveness mean to you?
Well, stress is a root cause of many diseases, because when we're carrying guilt, shame, resentment, bitterness, all of those thoughts cause depression, negative thoughts, regrets. I heard something recently that I thought was so profound, is that depression is caused by either regrets from the past or fear of the future. Sometimes both. And so many of us are carrying all these things, right? Our own shame and guilt for our mistakes. We're carrying anger and resentment and bitterness toward people that have hurt us. And if you keep carrying those things, if you don't let them go, if you don't choose to forgive, then those emotions are toxic emotions, and they will slowly poison you and pollute you. They create a physical response in your body that is a disease state. And that disease state is elevated cortisol and adrenaline and suppressed immune function, increased inflammation as a result of being in a state of chronic stress. And what do we do when we're in stress? We self-medicate. Well, how do we self-medicate? We overeat, we smoke, we drink, we abuse drugs, or we just take prescription drugs, antidepressants or whatever, become sex addicts, become workaholics. We become, we're just constantly looking for ways to medicate ourselves, to distract ourselves from dealing with our unhappiness, which is caused by, again, those things I said: bitterness, resentment, shame, guilt, so and fears and worries. So I had to confront all that stuff in my life, right? I had all those things. Most of us do. I had all those things: insecurities, self-doubt, self-loathing, self-hatred. And I really just didn't like myself, man. I didn't like myself for lots of reasons. And I didn't like a lot of other people for lots of reasons that don't matter. And so I made a decision to forgive. I kept coming across information from other health influencers and healers and survivors. They're talking about how stress will make you sick and unforgiveness is toxic. And so I just said, okay, I'm just going to forgive everyone who's ever hurt me. I'm going to forgive them all by name, one by one.
How'd you forgive yourself?
So there's sort of three different, forgiveness kind of goes in three different directions, four directions. One is you forgive the people who've hurt you. And that's a simple process. Not easy, but it's simple. You basically just, I close my eyes, I get in a prayerful state, meditative, prayerful state, and just I start talking to God, and I'm like, okay. And first I start thinking through my life, right? Like, okay, who's hurt me? And when you first start thinking, like, nothing comes up, right? But if you start just really start digging through your memories, there are people in life that have hurt you, right? Going back to elementary school, junior high, high school, college, the workplace, family members, strangers, right? And people start coming up. And as they come up, I would just say, God, you know what they did, and you know how I feel about it, and still hurts. I'm still mad about it, but I'm choosing to forgive them, and I'm letting it go, and I'm giving it to you. They're all yours, right? It's like I'm just laying it down, and I just picture just like laying it at the feet of Jesus. That's the way I see it. So I just lay it down, like the pain, the anger, the frustration, right? I'm giving it to you, and I'm asking you to bless them. Cool. So not only am I deciding I'm not going to hold this against them anymore, I'm asking you to bless this person, we'll just say John, who hurt me. Bless their business, bless their marriage, bless their health, right? And I know that sounds crazy because I don't want them to be blessed. I don't want that, okay? But I'm asking God to do it anyway. And when you pray that way, man, I'm telling you, something miraculous happens in your heart. And God comes in and he heals it. He heals your heart. That's the way you heal your heart, is through forgiveness. And the weight, right, is lifted off of you. It's just amazing. You don't ever have to talk to the person again. None of that. It's just between you and God, right? You're holding it against somebody and you just let it go, man. And so that's the first way. The other way is there are people you need to make amends with, right? So there are people you need to go talk to and say, hey, I was wrong. You were right. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about this, that, and the other, right? And I'm asking for your forgiveness. I hope you'll forgive me. So that's huge. That's a big one too, because that relieves guilt, right? When you apologize and ask for forgiveness, that's how you deal with guilt and shame, both of those things, when you humble yourself and do that. And then the other way, in terms of forgiving yourself, is there's just a beautiful parable in the Bible about the prodigal son. And the story, the quickest version of the story is, this is the son of a very wealthy man asks for his inheritance early. So just imagine a 18-year-old kid saying, Dad, I want my inheritance right now. Like, and he's like, are you sure? And try to talk you out of it or whatever. And no, I want my inheritance right now. This is what I want. So he's like, okay, here's your inheritance. He moves away, moves to the city. He's got all this money and he's living it up, right? He's partying. spending money, throwing parties, like making all these new friends. But he's a fool and he runs out of money. And he is so foolish that he loses his place to live, loses all his friends, ends up so hungry and desperate that he's like working for a pig farmer and having to eat pig slop, like literally eating the pig's food because he has no money and nothing to eat. And he realizes he can't go home because he's completely ashamed of what he's done, blew his inheritance. But he realizes my father's servants eat better than this, right? And I'll just go back and ask my father if I can just be one of his servants, work as a servant. That would be better than this. And so he goes back home. His father sees him coming and runs to meet him, embraces him, kisses him, and is so glad and excited and happy that his son has returned. And then he goes in the house and he says, we're throwing a party. My son's back. Puts a robe on him, puts a ring on his finger, right? And the son is completely undeserving, right? Completely undeserving of this. But his father forgave him, right? He forgave him. He brought him back into the family and said, he restores him, right? He restores his position as his son. And that is a parable Jesus told about how God views us. Doesn't matter what we've done. Doesn't matter how many mistakes we've made, how many shameful things we've done. As soon as we turn and return to him, he's there ready to embrace us and love on us and welcome us back into the family and forgive us. So that is just, man, such a profoundly beautiful picture of God's love for us. And so once you realize, like, God loves you, he's willing to forgive you no matter what you've done. You just have to return and ask. And then once you know, wait a second, well, God forgives me, I can forgive myself, right? That's how. And it's like, God has forgiven me. I don't have to beat myself up anymore. I can forgive myself. And you know what's really powerful too is when you take your mistakes and you hold them and you put them out there in the world and you shine a light on your mistakes so other people can see them, right? Because then you turn your pain into purpose, right? You turn your mistakes into something that you can teach someone else from. And it totally removes the power of, it removes the shame and guilt from your mistakes. You can say, you know what? I did the dumbest thing ever. Let me tell you about it so you don't do it. And so that's how that works. And it does work. It works every time.
Woohoo! All right, we gotta wrap things up quickly here. First off, where can people go? This is such a beautiful, comprehensive book. I can't recommend it enough. Where can people go to find Chris Beat Cancer?
You can find it on Amazon. That's the easiest place. It's also in a lot of major bookstores like Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Pretty much anywhere books are sold, you can find my book. And if you want to support your local bookstore, I hope you will, you can call your local bookstore and say, hey, do you have this book? If they have it, go get it. If they don't have it, they can order it for you because it's got, major distribution everywhere. So grab a copy of the book. And I think after you read it, you will want to buy another copy to give to someone you care about or to multiple people you care about, especially those with cancer. But anybody you know who's into health and wellness and nutrition and prevention, they'll love it.
Do you have a website?
The website is pretty easy to remember too. It's chrisbeatcancer.com.
Fantastic. And Jessica, my wife, she's the producer. She wouldn't let me finish this show without asking a question for parents and their kids. What have you learned or what suggestion would you give real quickly for parents for their kids today?
Yep. The most important thing you can do nutritionally for your kids is feed them lots of fruits and vegetables. I'm not a raw foodist, by the way, so you don't have to be a raw foodist, but your kids need fruits and vegetables. They're wonderful. So stop buying junk food, processed food, cookies and snacks and junk, and start buying more fruits and vegetables for them. It's great. Oatmeal for breakfast, bananas, grapes, oranges, apples, right? Fruit smoothies. Almond butter sandwiches, I mean, kids can be picky. I get it. Mine are picky too.
Yeah.
And then we always have like some cooked veggies for dinner. Like we'll have green beans and black beans and maybe a little salad on the side and rice or quinoa or corn, sweet potatoes. So like kids love those foods. Kids love starchy vegetables, right? They like carrots, most of them. And my kids are, they both have foods they like and don't like, and they're different. But we just encourage them to eat lots of fruits and vegetables for as long as they've been alive. And so they like them, right? They like them. And we don't buy Cokes and Dr. Peppers and Hostess cupcakes and Twinkies, right? So there's none of that stuff in the house. And when you don't have that stuff in the house, then, you're kind of forced to eat what's in the house. And if you buy fruits and vegetables, healthy stuff, then that's what your family's going to eat. So there might be some complaints and some moaning and groaning if you're trying to transition into healthier eating, but it's worth it. Okay, it's worth it. And so as the parent, you just have to put your foot down and be like, you know what, this is junk food. I'm not buying it anymore. Okay, and but we also don't. We're not those kind of parents where we try to control everything our kids eat all the time. So when they go to their friend's house or whatever, their grandparents, it doesn't matter. We don't care what they ate. We're not going to ask.
Yeah.
Right. And fortunately, they do make really healthy choices for the most part. But yeah, sometimes they totally eat junk food. Right. The junkiest junk food you can eat. Right. The kids love some junk, don't they? And sometimes they do, and it's fine. It's okay, right? Because we know we're feeding them super healthy 90, 8% of the time or something. So that's my best advice, is just really focus on fruits and vegetables for kids, and try to cut way back on the meat and dairy. They just don't need it. We've been conditioned to think we need to eat animal protein to be healthy or strong. It's not true. You don't. I'm healthy. I'm strong. I'm in the best shape of my life, and you just don't need it. But you need fruits and vegetables. That's what you do need.
Are you like a flexible vegetarian now? What would you call yourself? And then we've got to wrap things up. So I need to know if there are any last words of wisdom for everybody.
Yep. So I actually don't like dietary identities. Mm-hmm. So I don't call myself anything like a vegan or a vegetarian or anything like that. And I'm not against people who do. But I just made a choice. I don't really like a lot of the baggage, right, and connotations that come along with those identities, right? I don't think it's necessary. You don't have to become another thing, right? You don't have to become a thing. Yep. You just want to start eating differently. And so what I do, right, not what I am, but what I do is I eat a plant-based diet. Mm-hmm. And that's a diet that's rich in fruits and vegetables, food from the earth. And it's about 98 to 99% plant-based. Mm-hmm. So that means I'm not a perfect vegan. I don't think anyone needs to be a perfect vegan to be healthy. And we know from studies on healthy, long-living populations around the world that pure veganism is not necessary for optimal health, but a plant-based diet is. So to translate that into practical terms, you want to go from eating meat 3 times a day, which is what most people do. And that includes eggs, fish. And when I say meat, anything from an animal. Go from eating animal products 3 times a day to 3 times a week. Okay. So we're going to cut way back. 3 times a week. Make it a little bit special. Instead of just like every meal, I'm eating like a chicken's leg or a cow's butt, or like, you know what I'm saying? And then, but for me, I might eat something from an animal product a few times a month. So it's far less than that for me. It might be some wild caught fish or something like that, but it's just a very, very tiny, tiny fraction of my diet. And it's really just a hedge, just in case maybe there's something missing from my diet. I'll have a little fish every once in a while, but I don't have any proof that I'm actually missing anything. But it's just kind of a hedge. And when you look at the healthiest populations around the world, again, they do eat a little bit of animal food, right? But not nearly the levels of Americans.
And then any quick last words of wisdom you want to share with people?
I think the biggest, if I had to put something on a billboard, it would be your choices matter. your choices matter. The choices you make every day can produce health or disease in your body, right? I mean, it's all about what's on the end of your fork. And not just what you're eating, but it's also about what's eating you. So the two big things that have to be addressed, right, in health and disease prevention is what you're eating and what's eating you. So, I think we've covered that in pretty good detail today. So
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So thank you so much for being on the show. It's been fantastic. Absolutely love your book. See it really as a guidebook for life. So thank you again so much.
Thank you. It's been just a pleasure and an honor to talk and share my story. And I just appreciate you so much.
Goes both ways. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get Chris beat cancer, and begin pointing your own ship to Healthy Island today, subliminal here, and shine bright. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks, Michael. It's fun.
It was fun, and your story changes lives. So I can't thank you enough for sharing your story.
Man, that's what it's all about. Just trying to pay it forward, trying to inspire more people, save more people, and can't save everybody, but I can save some.
Yep. And it's all about a choice. If people are willing to make that choice. Now, there is the divine, but if you take a choice, like the question we didn't get to, which was asked by your Rolfing, your first Rolfist, I guess, which is, do you want to live? Because then you've got to make a choice and take massive action.
That's right, man. That's absolutely right. Got to choose. Everything, it all hinges on that one key principle, right? That you have to choose to live. And if you're choosing to live, then okay, step one, choose to live. Step two, what are you going to do about it?
Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!